It's the Eagle Community Television Forum with your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, I'm Gary Shorman, and you're watching the Forum on Eagle Television. Great to have you watching along as our forum's brought to you by Hayes Med. You know, today's program really deals with some things that have been happening the last few weeks. And with us is our guest, Darin, who's the chief of the Ellis County Rural Fire Department Emergency Management. And Darin, good to have you. It's been a couple years, almost 3 since you've been on the program.
Somewhat a good thing.
That is a good thing. And you know what? We talked about it earlier. You still don't have all the fires under control because we've had some serious fires in the last few weeks. And frankly, even during winter, what you call really winter months, had some fires that we were dealing with. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some things prevention-wise. And there's some things you can do to really help this out. So Darin, you've been in the fire fighting business for what, 15 years now?
It's about 17.
17 total. So you're in the fire business, you're doing that. Are the fires that we've had the last few weeks in the area, are they worse than what you've seen?
Well, the fire we had last year up there on Codell was actually a little bit larger, by a couple thousand acres. However, you know, over the last couple years, we have a lot of moisture throughout the year. You know, we've had a couple years of above average moisture. Well, that allows the crops and the fuels, the grasses, the weeds all to grow. But over the winter months, it dries off, it cools off, it dries everything out, and we haven't had a lot of significant snowpack over the last couple of years, which pushes all that vegetation back down to the ground, which slows down and hinders the fire growth after the fire season kicks back up. So the last couple of years, you know, for the last 2 years, we've broken state records Kansas-wide across the state for fire. So yeah, they are progressively getting worse.
Well, you and I are going to talk a little bit later about some things maybe that can happen that help prevent some of this, because you get in on the firefighting end of it once the fire has started. You and the team, a group of people have been up here. How many fires? I think it was March 6th that had several fires that seemed to be in different locations throughout the north part of Ellis County, and even one inside the city limits. How many total fires were there, and how many people were involved with that whole project on March 6th?
So the first fire there happened just before, a couple hours before noon, was right there along I-70, about mile marker 160. On that fire, I should have looked before I came, but I believe we had about 40 different resources between law enforcement, you know, KHP, Hayes PD, Ellis County Sheriff's Department, EMS, and fire, Hayes Fire, Ellis County Fire. And it was about, I believe, about 83 personnel. So over that fire, which was about a mile long, just over 100 acres, is what that fire ended up to be. And that's kind of what started all the trigger points for the rest of the day. We had that main fire, which probably everybody within the city of Hayes here knows very well because of its close proximity. You know, it burnt right up to the city limits, you know, and there's a lot of homes affected right in that area. So that was the first fire. About the time we got that wrapped up and almost under control is when the fire clear up north at Toulon and Homestead happened. That was about just a few minutes after noon, and that fire ended up being about 7.5 miles long. It was about 5,100 acres. And we finally sent the final crews, besides the ones of us that stayed overnight, to monitor right before midnight. The one on Vine Street, they started going home around 9 p.m. So pretty much from 10 a.m. till, you know, that 14 hours later, we were actively fighting fire.
I know many people, you know, you'll see on TV, California is kind of you see the fires that they have out of the big brush fires, people watering down their homes. But that was happening in North Hayes, where people were watering down the roofs of their home, trying to make sure they were, and getting their possessions out of their home. And that's scary for any family when you have to think that what you own, those things that belong to your family, could all go up in smoke. So you see that, and yet that happened throughout Ellis County.
And that goes through all of our minds too, as much as we, you know, want to stop the fire. You know, we've got to make decisions on how and where we can attack a wildland fire compared to where the homes are at, the terrain, you know, the types of the grasses that are there. You know, the taller they're going to spread quicker, and you know, we see those homes coming. We try to do as much as we can to get in front and make a stand in front of the homes. And luckily, on March 6th, we did not lose a single residential structure through both of those fires that day.
One of the impressive parts were the big helicopters coming in, scooping water out of ponds and then dropping it on the fire. You know, they're big helicopters and 800-900 gallons in those big bags they were carrying. It seems like a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that big when you're that far away. Each of their, we call them Bambi buckets. Each of those buckets that you see hanging with 660 gallons in it, which is about the size of our brush trucks we have on our vehicles. So they can drop that amount of water within a few seconds, where we can spread out a lot longer, but it takes us a lot longer. That first day, I haven't had the reports from the second day, but the first day they dropped over 44,000 gallons of water on the fire north of. We positioned them on the north end of the fire, so they did a lot of work for us.
So talk about how you position them, because that was one of the questions. You just can't randomly throw water out on the ground. That doesn't work. But what do you do to position them?
So it takes a little, some strategic planning. We have to coordinate where our resources are at, look at where we can use the drops the most effective and efficient. We put them on the north end of the fire because that's where the terrain was the worst, where we had a lot of gullies and ravines, where a lot of trees and brush that we couldn't actually get down to without physically having crews pull a hose down, which is unsafe. So that's where we positioned all the Blackhawks off that on that first day when they arrived.
So when you see that happen, it looks like it just a giant sprinkler kind of goes out with prop wash and all of that. It's really amazing to take a watch and watch.
Yeah, they have different ways. If the public saw the way those Bambi buckets were hanging from the Blackhawks, they can either position them so that way they can basically get a spot on an area, or they can go over a wide area. So they're trained to do different ways on how to deploy the water.
It's interesting too, they just didn't show up by accident. They actually staged them in certain areas. How does that work? Because you're coordinating across the state with other agencies to make that happen.
Correct. We have a state fire working group that a lot of fire departments are a part of, a lot of different organizations. And over the significant fires we've had over the last couple of years, we've burned hundreds of thousands of acres, mostly in the south central part of the state. But just last year on March 7th, us as Ellis County sent out help for others. We were in Reno County that day, Rooks County, Ness County, and Russell County, helping them. And they're seeing that when these fires start, that the deployment of the resources it's so massive across the state. So they're pre-positioning resources now in the event of red flag days or multiple days. So that way, when the resources are needed, they are strategically placed to be able to get to the fires quickly. The Blackhawks were pre-positioned in Salina that day, and as soon as, I'm guessing probably the social media helped the most, getting it up to the state level, and they were calling me within probably 30 to 45 minutes on scene, letting us know that the resources were available and they were going to start sending them. So that took us into the next phase. Luckily, we had the fire in Hayes knocked down, and we didn't need those, but we did end up redeploying them up north to the fire.
One of the communities that I'll say was in the target range of the fire was Catherine. How close did Catherine come to really having severe damage?
Well, I know we had a lot of concerned folks up in that area just because of the amount of smoke that we had going. But when we were looking at the flow path, which is where the fire was going, the head of the fire, which is where the wind was blowing it, it was actually blowing, pushing the fire away from Catherine to the north. The fire was progressing to the southeast, but the fire was about 3 to 3.5 miles northeast of Catherine. So after about halfway through the incident, we were fairly positive that it was going to affect Catherine. However, depending if it went another 8-10 miles, we'd be looking at probably either of Walker or Victoria.
And when you look at those sort of things, who makes the call? Because NCK Tech ended up being evacuating the school, mainly because of smoke more than anything, but there was some danger there. Who makes that call? Do you call schools, you call the hospital, do you call the city mayor and say, hey, it's time to evacuate?
We didn't make any suggestions on any evacuations within the city. I know that there was a lot of pictures and a lot of media. There's a lot of people out driving around checking out the fires. And I'm just guessing from the amount of smoke that was, specifically right there at NCK, because we were bordering right up there on their property. They made the decisions just because of the heavy fire load, the smoke load that was in that area. I know the school district was even putting out social media posts saying that, you know, Hayes High wasn't affected and they're not evacuating. So a lot of the individuals' businesses were making the decisions on when to close. I think even Bruckner's up there, I think they shut their doors and left.
I know one of the things that you see on social media or on technology where you're doing a Hayes Post had the biggest day ever as far as people checking in to see what was happening next and being able to take part of it. So social media and those types of electronic media play a big role in spreading the story. You just want the story to be spread correctly as to what's going on and what's happening. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about two things. One, what can we do to prevent these or help prevent these fires? And secondly, what can you do to be prepared? Our guest, Darin Myers, who's chief of the Ellis County Rural Fire District and Emergency Management. Back with more after this.
Hayes Med is your first and best choice for healthcare. They're the only facility providing tertiary level services in this region. With more than 70 physicians and 26 specialties ranging from heart, orthopedic, spine care, cancer, obstetrics and gynecology, wound care, rehabilitation and surgery, including the Da Vinci robotic surgery, Hayes Med is your comprehensive health provider for people throughout Western Kansas. Hayes Med, helping people be healthy.
Eagle Communications is your ultimate business partner. We provide business class phone with customizable features and fast, reliable internet. Your knowledgeable team at Technology Solutions has a broad base of IT services to meet your needs. Let the experts at Marketing Solutions get your message to the right people on the best platforms. The only piece missing is your business. Call Eagle Communications today at 877-61-EAGLE.
Welcome back to the second half of our forum here on Eagle Television. It's brought to you by Hayes Med. And I always like to remind everybody to send me notes because a lot of times we catch, like it's hard to miss the fires that we had a few weeks ago. Obviously a great story, but you may know somebody in the community that's done something special that's made a real difference. Send me a note. Let me know their name. We'll get them on this program. It's gary.shorman@eaglecom.net. You can also find us on the forum on Facebook under ECTV Forum. Our guest, Darin Myers, who's now in close to his third year as the chief of the Ellis County Rural Fire Department and Emergency Management. Obviously, big day, March 6th, a lot of fires. But one of the things I want you to brag about, because there was a great coordination of rural firefighters and people working together to do that, whether it be people hauling water, getting it dumped, getting it in the right spot, the coordination of that. You know, no homesteads were lost. There were some outbuildings lost, but no homes were lost. That probably has to be a win for you guys when you're out fighting fires like that.
It's a true testament to the dedication of all the emergency service, not just the fire department. You know, we were in communication with different agencies out there saying we have a home here, a home there. The law enforcement was out in front of us, making sure people were out of their homes and moving. The firefighters were getting to those locations, making a stand in front of the homes and watching as the fire progressed, so that way if there was any ignition of materials, we could help put them out. But it was very impressive. You know, you had 7 miles of fire, 50-mile-an-hour winds, flames shooting 30, 40 feet in the air, that we did not lose a single home. That's a good one to put in the books, I guess you could say.
I guess one of the challenges you ran into this, because you talked about didn't have any homes lost, but there were some near accidents and accidents based because just of the number of, I'll call them tourists, who get in their car, they hear something's going on, drive out and drive around into the smoke, out of the smoke, and at some point that's going to be a hazard, because I know you have firefighters running up and down with heavy equipment, water trucks, doing all that. What can you tell folks that just want to go out and
So there's a lot to fighting a wildland fire that's a lot different than a fire within the town. It's so geographically, it's so much larger, and there's so many different aspects to how we're fighting a fire, to how we're positioning things. Another one of the successful outcomes to what we had up there is the amount of private farm implement devices that we had up there, to the different companies that brought water trucks and fuel trucks up there. But there's a lot of different resources up there on that fire. I think we had 83 different resources between PD, law enforcement, fire, and public works, county mutual aid departments, and we're all constantly moving around that fire scene, We're not actively sitting there on the fire line the whole entire time. We have to get off the fire line to reposition. They have to get off the fire line to fill up their water tanks, to swap out crews at some point. So there's a lot of traveling, and just by us, and that alone is unsafe at times. And then you add the visibility of all the smoke that's going around, the dust that's flying. We do not need the onlookers up there that we had those couple of days, even right around Hayes. We need to let our emergency responders do the work out there in the field. Unfortunately, but fortunately, we had one patrol officer, highway patrol, was involved in an accident. Luckily, everybody's okay, but there's several situations out there where you can get yourself in a bad accident, and we need to give the fire personnel, the law enforcement, everybody a long range. Just stay away and take pictures. Come up the day after and look if you want, but there's no reason to cause any more injuries or any more risk than what there already is up there.
Some of that's big equipment too, that they're running up and down the road, be tractors.
You're not going to win against semis, tractors, water trucks. Yeah.
All that's going to happen. What can we do to help stop some of these fires? Because I know there's a lot of electrical wires running around. Some of the electrical supply lines have been in for years and years up there. How can we help with that?
Well, it's just maintaining your property. A lot of the power poles up in those locations aren't monitored daily or as normal, like down here in Hayes, the power poles, as they're just not monitored as well as in Hayes. So the lease owners and everybody that's up there and where all the lines go, as they're driving through their, checking their wells or just checking on the property, look for those power poles that are leaning over, or maybe if any of them are sparking or making noise in the wind, and then call their maintenance companies to come out and keep a good eye on them and replace the insulators or replace the poles if they need to keep them upright. But part of it's just a windy day, and you have 50-mile-an-hour winds, you're swaying poles around, they're going to arc a little bit. Some of it can be prevented, but it's just with anything, from your home, protecting yourself from home fire, to protecting yourself from grass fires, to mowing your yards, around your house, having the proper landscaping so that way you can prevent the fire from getting close to your home, maintaining the power lines that are out there. It's just doing all those simple things that add up and can make a big difference.
And of course, the silly things like throwing a cigarette butt out and those sort of things, you think everybody knows not to do that, but those things start fires.
Another thing that we see all the time going down the road, individuals pulling trailers, and you have the safety chains that are connected to your trailers, but their safety chains are too long, so they're dragging on the road, and those safety chains blow out sparks, and they'll start a lot of fires too.
You see that at nighttime. During the day, you drive down the road and you see the sparks coming out from under you, going, what's that? And sure enough, it's that chain dragging under there. So
see that a lot.
Be careful. If we can prevent 1 or 2 fires, that's 1 or 2 that you guys don't have to be out in the middle of, and you never know where that fire starts, where it might lead,
and who it might affect.
Yeah. Let's talk about the individual. You at home, 1, don't go out and drive around, look at the fire, but 2, what should you do in your home to prepare, of having things maybe in special spots? What do you recommend to people?
Well, it just comes down to just being prepared in general. You can be prepared for several different things. For having what we call go kits at most of the time, where just having a plan in place, and a simple plan can be used for a tornado emergency, for a fire emergency, flooding, wind, hail damage. It's just getting all your belongings in place so that way when you have to evacuate, or if you have to leave, or if that certain situation is happening, you already know. We teach it to our 3rd graders, 2nd graders at school, the fire drills. What do you do when there's a fire in your house? You tell them to escape out of their house, go to a meeting place. Us as adults, we need to have that as well. We need to be just as proactive on, we never hope we have a fire, but we need to be able to take care of ourselves in that case.
Where's your fire extinguisher? Does that fire extinguisher work? Where are your important documents? Those sort of things, so it's quick. What do you want to do with your pets? And because that becomes a big problem as well.
A big concern for a lot of people nowadays is, a lot of people leave pets at home during the day when they go to work, and you have a fire that's impending on their house. They're concerned about their house just as much as their pets.
You know what? between now and when this show airs in a couple weeks, I hope there's rain. But right now we've been through one of the driest periods ever, at least recorded ever, over the winter time with lack of snow, lack of moisture. Your job isn't going to get easier the next few weeks and months.
Dodge City, which is the weather office, National Weather Service, it's been more than a half a year since they've had more than 1/10 of an inch or anything more than a slight trace of rain down there over a half a year. I think it was 185 days today. We've had a little bit more than them, but nothing sufficient enough to calm down the environment that we're in. So everybody needs to be cognizant of that, cognizant of what they're doing, thinking of themselves, thinking of their neighbors, and just do their part to stay safe.
Well, Darin, thanks for you and all the firefighters out there that went to work for all of us out there, because you're out there in the fire, chasing the fire, stopping the fire, and helping keep the rest of us safe.
Yep.
Darin Meyer has been our guest here. He's the Ellis County Rural Fire Chief and Emergency Manager. And when you saw the smoke, he was right in the middle of that with the rest of the team, making us and helping us stay safe. Before I end this program, Darin, I want to thank Brandon Cooley, who's behind the camera over there. Brandon and I have been doing this show for about 14 years. He doesn't look that old, I know that, but he came to us as a young guy, been doing a great job, makes our guest look great. And Brandon, want to wish you luck in your next career, and maybe we'll see you again down the road sometime. Brandon, thank you. That's been the Forum program here on Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching. The Forum is brought to you by Hayes Med and by Eagle Communication, our community connected.
Are you frustrated with Wi-Fi dead zones in your home? It happens when you don't have Boost, the cutting-edge Wi-Fi solution from Eagle Communications. A Boost-certified Eagle technician maps your home, then installs a dual-band modem and router, plus discrete access points to deliver wall-to-wall Wi-Fi with no dead zones. Boost powers all your family's devices in all the places you love to live. Get Boost. Wi-Fi made simple. Only from Eagle Communications. Call today.